Hello, my name is Lisa Boland Blake, and I'm the Gifted and Talented Coordinator for the Mahtomedi Public Schools. On October 6, 2011, we held a meeting, an informational meeting, about our Gifted and Talented program, and many people attended. And at that meeting, people expressed that they would like to see this slide deck online, and so we decided to add audio to it and bring this to you. When we began our parent meeting, we were asking our parents to think about their own children. What were some gifts or talents that they really admired or appreciated about their own child? And then we had a chance to turn and meet someone else, another parent of a child that was identified as gifted and talented, and start to talk to one another, build that community. Many of you said in a survey that was recently completed by about 52 of our gifted and talented families, said that you really wanted opportunities to meet other families and to talk to one another, so we decided to begin our meeting in this way. So there were three goals that we wanted to meet that evening. The first of the goals was that parents will understand how Mahtomedi meets the needs of gifted and talented learners. We also wanted parents to understand the review process for the district's gifted and talented program, because last year the program came up for review. So we want you to understand what we did and how we decided to make the changes we did. And also, we wanted you to understand the role of this new position, or I might refer to it as an expanded position of the Gifted and Talented Coordinator. We began our evening by talking about the definition of gifted and talented, and one of the things we know is that there isn't one universally accepted definition for gifted and talented, but there are major components that generally are present in most definitions. So we decided to take a look at the definition from the Minnesota Department of Education, and you'll notice that one of the things the department did is they highlighted some important words for us to consider. One of them is that gifted and talented students need to be identified. There are many different ways of identifying students. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But also that the students that are identified represent the diversity of our learning community. That no matter what experience or environment children come from, that they are identified and able to use the gifts and to have services to help them to expand their gifts that they were given. Students who are identified as gifted and talented, potentially they require differentiation in their educational programming. And we'll be talking a little bit about that later too. So what did Mahtomedi do last year? Well, they look every year. Mahtomedi has a certain number of their programs, curricular programs, that come up for review, because we know that we continue to learn about how the brain works. We continue to learn, and new studies are released on best practices in teaching students. So there's a regular curriculum review cycle. So it was time for the Gifted and Talented program to be reviewed. There was a committee that was formed in the fall of 2010 that had representation from each of the building sites, and this representation also included administrators, guidance counselors, teachers, staff members, other staff members, and there was a parent on the team as well. How they began the review process is they began with 4 whole group meetings, and at the first meeting they looked for some expert input from someone who's currently in the field of gifted and talented education. So they went to Dr. Karen Rogers from the University of St. Thomas, and she came and talked to the group. They also did a lot of research gathering. They studied what's going on in other schools. They looked at our current programming in Mahtomedi for gifted and talented, and then they recommended changes to the current programming. On top of the 4 whole group meetings, the team divided into 4 work groups. And the work groups each had responsibilities. So here's where we are in that program review process. You can see that deciding what the program components will be, what will the direction and the vision be for the next 3 to 5 years, is complete. Each site has a building plan, and along with that plan, you'll notice the program evaluation is also complete. There are measurement tools in place that we'll need to take a look at the end of each of those years to assess our progress. Now, 2 of the subcommittees are still in process. One is that in any gifted and talented program, you need to have policies that guide the decision making. One of the policies that needed to be reviewed was the early entrance policy. Now that one's ready to go, and it's awaiting board approval in November. Also, one thing that happens in gifted and talented is there needs to be a clear process for acceleration Acceleration can be by subject, or acceleration could be a grade that a child moves forward. Right now, this is part of a larger policy, and it's a weighting committee review. Finally, the last small work group was on the eligibility. How do we identify gifted and talented learners in Mahtomedi? So this one is still in process, and it's a huge goal for us this year to take a look to make sure that we have an equitable and defensible identification system. So here's a little bit about the gifted and talented learners in Mahtomedi. If you look across the bottom, you'll notice that those are the numbers represent the grade level. If you look along the side, you'll notice that that represents the percentage of that grade level that was identified as gifted and talented. We did put in red the actual numbers of students that are identified as gifted and talented in each grade level. One pattern that you may note is that, from 6th grade up, or 7th grade up, the numbers are a little bit lower than they have been in the last few years. We'll talk about that in our next slide. One of the things about our current identification system is that students are identified at the end of 2nd grade. So all students take the COGAT, the Cognitive Abilities Test. And also students are assessed 3 times throughout the year using the NWEA test in math and reading. If you wanted to qualify or be identified as a gifted and talented learner in Mahtomedi, you would have a COGAT score of higher than 133 or higher. That would be that mean that you'd be automatically identified as gifted and talented. If you take a look, if you were in the 127 to 132 range on the Cognitive Abilities Test, then they would look at 3 more academic data points to see if you qualified. They looked at the reading and math, the NWEA scores, or some of us as parents know them called the MAP scores. If there were 3 consistent 95% or higher in reading and or math, the students would also be given the identification as gifted and talented. Now what we need to do is take a look to see if that system is equitable. We're going to, some of the research has already been done on what our neighboring districts are doing, what best practice says. But for future identification, we want to make sure that the criteria will be revised so that we have an equitable, defensible system. Here's some other facts about Mahtomedi's GT learners. Right now, there are 196 Mahtomedi students identified as gifted and talented, and that actually equals 7.3% of our student population in grades 3 through 12, because remember, students are identified at the end of 2nd grade. In the Mahtomedi public schools, 91.7% of our student population is identified as white. In our students that are identified as white, 7.6% of them are also identified as gifted and talented. So the remaining population, 8.3% of our total population, are identified as students of color. Out of all the students of color, only 3.5% of students of color are identified as gifted and talented. If we take a look at our free and reduced population, those students represent 10% of our total population, yet only 2.6% of students on free and reduced lunch are identified as gifted and talented. So this is not unusual in the state of Minnesota. We know that there are there's an achievement gap, and what we're trying to do here is make sure that we recognize gifts in all our students. So we're going to take a look at that identification process and to see if we can improve on recognizing talents within all our students. So IDEA is an acronym that Mahtomedi has adopted for serving our gifted and talented students, and it basically just stands for individuals who need differentiation, enrichment, and acceleration. Differentiation, enrichment, and acceleration are widely accepted as interventions for students that are gifted and talented and need some different programming. So when Mahtomedi did the curriculum review, they adopted a model called the level of services model for serving gifted and talented learners. So you can see here that the level 1 of levels of services model talks about what are services that all students will be provided. And generally, these will handle many needs that students have. So a high quality curriculum with differentiation, 21st century thinking skills, social skills embedded into the everyday instruction, and also flexible grouping. That is really going to be effective for many of our learners. Then we also know that there are some students that are going to need a different level or more service provided to them. They may need enrichment. They may need to be subject accelerated. That would mean that a student, for example, would be in 4th grade, has already mastered the 4th grade curriculum in mathematics and may need to move forward to the 5th grade curriculum in mathematics to be at the right level for them as a learner. And also, there still may be students yet who that is not enough service for, and we need to do some radical programming changes. And these are services for just a very few that will need these. But some of our students may need to be admitted early to school. They're prepared, they're ready to go. They may need a whole grade level acceleration. This is a process that is very rigorous within our district and our state, actually, in order to determine whether we would grade accelerate a student. For some of our students, they need to graduate early, or they need to have dual enrollment in college as well as high school, or they may need an individualized learning plan. So the level of services model has got a lot of variety to it to help us determine what level our students need to achieve and to be challenged. So the gifted coordinator role has been revised and expanded. So here are some of the things that is going to be expected within the next 3 to 5 years. At the district level, we'll need to make sure that we create an equitable identification system, and that will actually be happening this year. We'll also, at the district level, the coordinator is going to be responsible for evaluating the program by student outcomes. And right now, we don't have a connection, as clear a connection as we'd like, between the student's area of talent and having access to that achievement data. So we're going to be working on that this year. And also at the district level, we're going to provide K-12 service coordination. Students might see how it will impact students is there will be someone always looking, the coordinator will be looking at their achievement data and analyzing if there's any gaps or anything that doesn't seem like the child is staying on track, and then we'll create some plans to address that. And also they may see the gifted and talent coordinator in their classroom doing social skills instruction to the whole entire group that would help meet with social emotional needs. They might see the gifted and talented coordinator, or you will see them collaborating with the PBIS staff, the counselors at each building, and teachers to help meet the social emotional needs of the students. And also there may be times when there will be pull-out academic instruction for small groups, and it'll be on a time-limited topical basis. The teachers will be served by the gifted coordinator by having more staff development and differentiation and talent recognition, and also by the gifted coordinator demonstrating lessons, observing lessons, and coaching in classrooms. They'll also be expected to plan collaboratively with grade and subject level teams. For you as parents, you have an advocate for your family and a person that you can contact. Now this role was there last year as well, and just to reaffirm that that role will remain the same. And also the gifted and talented coordinator will build and maintain a website. We looked at the gifted and talented list and sent out, according to emails, a survey to our families with identified gifted and talented learners. 52 families decided to fill that survey out. And here's what you were hoping to see the gifted coordinator do. And it's exactly what the district has mandated. So we are on the same path together, and this also gives me as the gifted and talented coordinator some priorities that you have for what you're hoping will happen this year with that role. So what is the same? There's still going to be differentiated academic instruction. Flexible grouping is still happening. We're going to continue to cluster kids in homeroom. We may need to be more aware of how many we're putting in each homeroom. We will continue to identify gifted and talented students with a clear process. That process may change, but we still will identify students. And we will continue to have very high academic expectations and follow those with the students for both academic and social emotional. What's going to be different? In years past, there's been regular pull-out groups for social emotional instruction at O.H. Anderson, and that will no longer be occurring, as that's going to be shifting, and the social emotional instruction is going to be shifting to other staff members like the PBIS staff or our counselors in coordination with the gifted and talented coordinator. Also, we need to make sure that our identification process becomes more equitable and that we're identifying students of color as well as students that are on free and reduced lunch. And that we want to make sure that this identification process also we have that it aligns with our assessment process so that we can easily see the progress our students are making. You're also going to notice that there will be more time allotted now for K-12 coordination and alignment of services. And there will be increased staff development around talent recognition and differentiation throughout these next 3 to 5 years as we're unrolling and getting the program going. So our goal is to increase the teacher's capacity to provide for this differentiation throughout the whole learning day. In our parent survey, we asked you, how are we doing challenging your students? You're going to notice that the blue bars are an expected degree of challenge that you're reporting. We also, some parents were using the purple bar, which was this was more challenging than I thought it would be for my child, or the orange bars are less challenging. So you can see a clear pattern immediately, and we did too, that in the area of writing, science, social studies, we have work to do to increase the level of challenge for some of our students. And we also asked you, how would you know as a parent if your child's needs are being met? And you talked a lot about that there'd be high levels of academic progress. You also talked about that your child would be more excited and energetic about school. So these are some of the things that you said would be a key indicator for you that your child's needs are being met. And we also wanted to talk about how, as a parent, how can we help our students? And what are some specific things that we can do? Well, one of them is just to be aware that your child is multifaceted. They're going to have various talents, interests, and gifts. They may be really strong in mathematics, but they might not be as strong in reading. Well, they're still gifted and talented, and every child has a different combination of those gifts and talents. You might want to search out opportunities for your child to explore those gifts. Have you thought about Summer Academy or the Minnesota Institute for Talented Youth and enrolling them in a really engaging class with other gifted and talented learners? You want to be aware that there can be possible social emotional challenges that are part of being a gifted and talented person. And educating yourself about those potential challenges so it's not surprising when you see that they pop up with your own child. There's a book, The Survival Guide for Gifted and Talented Students, that would be a really good thing to read and talk about with your child. You want to make sure that you stay in respectful and consistent communication with your child's teachers. That's your first person you go to communicate how your child is perceiving their learning. And when you talk to classroom teachers, it's really helpful if you're clear about what you are hoping for your child and clear about what you are observing. You may have a particular gift as a parent and a passion that you'd be willing to share. There are many, many levels of enrichment groups, Knowledge Bowl, other things that are already set up waiting for people to lead them. And finally, love, love, love your child. They have many unique talents and qualities. Listen to them. Listen to their hopes, their questions, and their concerns. So I asked the families that attended the October 6th meeting to fill out what we called an exit ticket. How did it go for you? Did we meet these 3 goals that we said that we were going to meet? And we have already taken that data and put it together. And I would love to invite you to tell me how did this help you, this presentation? Did it meet these 3 goals? And here's how you can get in contact with me. If you take a look, this is my contact information, my lisa.blake@montemita.k12.mn.us if you want to email me or feel free to call. So really appreciate you taking the time to listen to this presentation and very much hope that it was informative for you.